If I could describe the Get My Life tour in one word, it would be vulnerability. Showing up for yourself is so important. Welcome to the Get My Life tour. I'm your host, Lydia T. Blanco. Hey y'all, and welcome to the Get My Life tour. It is me, your host, Lydia T. Blanco. And as always, you know that I am excited because you decided to take time out of your day to show up here and take center stage in your life. Thank you for being on the Get My Life tour with me. My goodness, it feels so good to be back. I have this renewed sense of enthusiasm. I am over the moon because I feel like there is this renewing that has happened and is taking place. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be a part of it. I don't know what you're feeling right now, but I'm clearly on 1,000 right now. And, as I'm on 1,000, I'm just so grateful because every time that you decide to show up for yourself and join me right here on tour, it does something. It truly does something for me. So thank you again. I have been so excited, yet a little all over the place. For those who know, Mercury's in retrograde. And it's so funny because I used to think that it was, a little extra when people often spoke about it. Then I learned that my ruling planet is Mercury. And you're probably wondering, why in the world am I talking about astrology and all this other stuff on the Get My Life tour? And it's honestly because I've been paying more attention to it. I do not know everything. I still don't even know what people's astrological signs are based on when they were born, unless I am close to them and know, because I know their birthday and they talk about their sign. But I say that because a lot of people have been feeling this shift. And I'm not certain if this is true for you as well, but there has been this shift. And some people are feeling like they are in alignment. Others feel like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And while I honestly can say that I'm on the spectrum and somewhere in between those two places, I am enthusiastic because there's something that's happening within inside, really. There's something that's happening inside of me. And I haven't really been able to explain the shift, but I know that there is this shift taking place. And the shift that is happening is really taking place because I am no longer expecting myself from other people. And that's what I want to talk about as I take center stage here in the Bay before I head back to New York. And it is really about the idea of not expecting you from other people. If you tuned into the Get My Life tour before, you've probably heard me allude to this idea before. It is not an original idea of mine. So you've probably seen it somewhere, maybe on social media, on a meme, or maybe you've heard someone else say it. Maybe if you're in therapy, your therapist has said it to you in some shape or form, or a family member, whomever. But for so long, I expected to receive what I'd given. And because I gave from a place of an abundance of myself or my own expectations, if that makes any sense, that is what I expected to receive in return. I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm kind, I pride myself on learning people's love languages and communicating with them that way. I struggle and have struggled with overextending myself to others. Anything you can imagine, I feel like I've positioned myself that way to accommodate others. And because I've been so flexible and adaptable, available, accessible, I assumed that I would get that in return. And with that expectation, y'all, comes a lot of disappointment. My goodness. I remember sitting in church in Greensboro, North Carolina while I was in college, and the pastor said, Pastor Marcus, he said, you know what? Your heart's not broken. It's your expectations. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Okay, that was a word. It was a word for me then. When I reflect on it, it is a word for me now. And it is often a word that I share with other people because oftentimes we think that our heart has been broken by other people, platonically or romantically, right? Depending on what the relationship is. But it is truly our expectations. And I strongly feel like heartbreak and having your expectations broken often feel very similar. Disappointment has like a certain sting, and it's hard to explain, but if you felt it before, you know what I mean. Like, it is crunching pain. It's something that you don't want to feel, right? Especially when you've given something or someone your all, to have your expectations broken or to be disappointed is just like, oh my goodness. You know, as I mature and as I grow in my relationships, I have had to learn how to set strict boundaries. Right. And I know boundaries is something that a lot of people are having conversations around, especially as, you know, we collectively do our work. Right. But setting boundaries for me has been extremely important. And when I learned that the boundaries were for me and not to manage others, that's when I began to take them more seriously. I always heard people say, set boundaries, boundaries, right? But I thought that they were doing others a favor by setting boundaries. And what I learned was that I was doing myself a favor. I was setting myself up for success. I was managing my energy and my expectations by setting a boundary. You know, those boundaries have looked a number of ways based on different relationships or environments or whatever the case may be. And, you know, honestly, that's the first thing I would offer to you as you unlearn placing the expectation of receiving you from other people. Those boundaries are for you. And sometimes we have to be strict and firm with ourselves because at times it is truly something within us. And I don't want to say that it's an issue, right? But it can become problematic when we engage with people in a way that places this higher, unrealistic standard or expectation on them because it's something that you truly desire receiving in return. Right? So in placing boundaries, that is one of the ways that I have learned to not expect me, right? I've also had to remember that everything is not, I don't want to say transactional because I don't like the idea of being transactional. Like if I'm making a purchase, I get it. But in relationships, I'm like, like I get it. There's like this natural transfer, right? You give and you take. But I've learned even in giving, like, look, this is not even, I don't even know how to say it, y'all, because some things I want to consider like love offerings or deposits or investments, right? But everything, I feel like you have to know that everything is not a transaction. Just because you give doesn't mean that you're going to receive. And when you understand that, you know that you have to be such a solid individual and you have to do things from your heart without expecting anything in return. I mean, not even to know how something went. When you give, it is important to release. It's also important to set boundaries, of course, as you give. I spoke about that on Instagram Live last week, and it was a really engaging conversation with a number of people who tuned in. Shout outs to anyone who was on that Instagram Live and who is now tuned in. You know, there were some women who I'm connected to and those who I, am getting to know as I grow my digital tribe. It was a great conversation. And so many of the women who chimed in really shared experiences where they felt like they were exhausted because they hadn't set boundaries, or people were just completely pushing them and they didn't really know how to speak up for themselves, right? But we talked about this whole idea of, people being transactional. And we also spoke about, setting boundaries as we give, right? Okay, so I hope that has been helpful so far. The other thing that comes to mind as it relates to not expecting you from other people is to know who you are dealing with. Okay, look, I don't know if you thought I was about to say something real revelatory, but that's it. You have to know who you are dealing with. Okay, everybody is not you. No one else is you. Let me just say that you are the only you. The Most High created one of you, even if you were a twin, a triplet, whatever comes after that, a quadruplet, anything, a quintuplet. You are the only you. And with that, you have to know, and I mean know, who you are dealing with. Sometimes we have these unrealistic expectations of others. And we know, right? I know you probably heard somebody say, you knew they wasn't, right? And sometimes you have to, well, not even sometimes, you have to remember that. People often show you who they are, believe them. And when you are honest about who it is that you are in relationship with, who you are doing business with, who you are working alongside of, you have to be mindful of how you are measuring whatever it is that you are going to expect from that person or do just exist and be with that person. Like, it's almost like we try to psych ourselves out when we are in any form of relationship with people and they're not delivering, right? And 9 times out of 10, you're not surprised when something happens. You're like, I kind of knew. Like, I just didn't, I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but no. Know who you are dealing with. There's not much out there to guess about when it comes to dealing with certain people. So it's important to know who you are dealing with because there's only one of you, like I said, right? And you can't expect, everybody to give you what it is that you are in search of. Something else that just came to mind is that even when you give things your all, it is arrogant to expect that in return. It is also arrogant to expect you in return, especially if there is any element of disappointment involved. I really think that's important to say, because sometimes we give things our all, and we have to really practice managing how much of ourselves we give to things, like to people, places, all of this stuff. We have to just be mindful of how much of ourselves that we give, because when you don't get that in return, that does something to you. And I feel like it honestly makes you a cold-hearted person. You've probably, or you probably can think of a couple of people who have gone hard for so long, and now they're bitter because they didn't get close to anything that they gave in return. Like, they didn't receive anything close to what they gave, is what I'm trying to say. And, for so long, I would give my all to things. I'm like, I'm just going to give this my all. I'm going to give this my everything. And I really think that there's something that needs to be said against that mentality all the time. It almost reminds me of people priding themselves on not sleeping and the amount of time they put in things. And I'm just like, that's cool if that works for you, but I don't think that has to be the standard for everything. I don't think that giving your all has to be the standard for everything. Some of us need to practice doing less and working smarter and being smarter in our relationships and our dealings with other people, because there's something that happens when our return on the investment that we made comes up short, right? For some people, that could be life staggering. You've gone so long in life and have given and given and given and given, and you're like, why won't it come back to me, right? There may be some other things that are involved, and I don't claim to know everything, so I'm not going to suggest what that could be, right? But I do know what it feels like to go so hard. Oh my goodness. Hard, okay? Invest money, take out loans, this, that, and the third, and then take inventory and try to measure things up and account for things. And I'm just like, what happened? Is this what giving my all looks like? You begin to question yourself, and it's a lot, okay? It is honestly a lot. And I say all that to say that you don't have to give everything your all. You don't have to give anyone your all. I feel like there's this, I feel like it's an unrealistic expectation. I do, right? Okay, so I'm not even going to try to go any deeper into that, because I will be talking this out with myself for I don't know how long, but I really hope that resonates with someone and that you get what I'm saying, right? I don't have all of the words, and I really hope that I've communicated my point, to a point of understanding. I recently had this conversation with my line sister, who was a guest here on the Give My Life tour, Jillian Lynham, PhD, and we talked about friendships and relationships and breakups and all these things on her podcast. The episode will drop soon, and I won't give anything away, right? But the premises of the conversation was around friendships being relationships too. And I always say that. I always tell people, look, friendships are relationships too. And I really learned that when someone who I was really close to for so long, we actually got into it while I was in college, and it changed the entire dynamic of the friendship. And, while we've reconciled and we're closer, at this point in life, things changed forever. They just truly did. And that's when it hit me that friendships were relationships too, right? They are relationships. And I bring that up, right? Because we are in some form of relationship with everything around us. Everything. As a believer, I believe that we are made up of everything, and everything in the earth calls back out to us, right? We have all these atoms and elements and all these wonders, and that is what attracts us, or at least I like to think that's what attracts us to different people. And it is also what I believe makes us attractive to other people. And in relationship, it is important to be mindful of how others choose to be in relationship with us, and why we choose to be in relationship with other people, and what that looks like, what that exchange looks like, what that time looks like, what the quality of the relationship looks like, and really pay attention to how other people need us. The reason why I'm saying this is because there are things that happen to us while we are in a relationship with others, be it platonically or romantically, and we really get our feelings hurt because we don't know our position in someone else's life, right? And, most things have an expiration date. I believe in, forever, and I understand the reality of things needing to end and things running their course. As I talk about unlearning the idea or the thinking that you should expect you from other people, I want you to hear me very clearly. And I'm taking my time saying this because this is a very sensitive topic for me and a lot of people, right? In relationship with others, we have to be mindful of who we are to them. And it is easy to become offended when someone no longer needs you for what they once needed you for. A lot of us, right? And I'll just include myself in this. A lot of us compartmentalize the relationships that we have with people, right? Like, okay, or we give it titles, and then based on those titles, we create our priorities. And sometimes you realize you've been repositioned, or you have some repositioning to do, right? Depending on the dynamics of the relationship. And because of who you've been to that person or how you've been in relationship with that person, you automatically get this feeling that that person would do things how you do them. They would treat you how you want to be treated, or they would treat you the way you treat them, right? And that's not always the case. It's not. And it can be very damning. It can be very disappointing when things don't happen the way we'd like for them to, or they don't turn out in our favor. But I had to say that because it's an important part of the conversation, and it's important to know that people can't give you, right? you're divinely and uniquely who you are. And no matter how long you are in relationship with someone, it's really unfair to expect that from them. You know, for me, it goes back to confidence and security and self-awareness, knowing yourself, loving yourself, protecting yourself, managing your energy, being in alignment, and so many other things. But, you know, it's challenging, right? At times being in a relationship with other people, because you think at some point you could teach people how to treat you. But I remember Auntie Yanlin saying something along the lines of you not being able to teach people how to treat you. And I believe that reigns true in every relationship that you are in. Okay, it goes all across the board. But I wanted to really, I really wanted to say that to y'all. And I had it outlined here because there are a lot of things happening in the world. And I really feel like this 7 months has put a lot of relationships into perspective for a number of people, right? You realize who you once called all the time, you don't need to call anymore. Who you didn't really think of all the time, it become more of your go-to person, or whatever the case may be. You know, for me, I say, or I have this thought often, I'm like, okay, well, I guess if I really didn't reach out in the last 7 months, I guess we weren't really that close, right? I really have been praying for who I am in relationship with, who I would love to be in relationship with. And, you know, I really, you know, am praying to have my heart be in alignment with my desires, right? There's often talk about our heart's desires, but I think those two have to be in alignment in order for a lot of the things that we say we want, desire, or believe we should have can actually manifest. Look, I know I just said a lot, but I really thought I had to say it. Well, it's not even a disclaimer. I said what I said clearly, but it's important, and it is unfair to expect you from other people. You know what? Before I get into my mic drop moment, I also have to stress the importance of knowing who you are, okay? Self-awareness is a part of this conversation because sometimes we expect us in return and we don't even know who we are, right? And that's just the reality. I thought I was giving off this and so I can't understand why, and oh, I wish I would have, and is that really how I am? Is that what I give you, right? Those are valid questions. But at the end of the day, alignment is so important. And sometimes we think that we're communicating certain things, or we think that we've arrived and we have not. And the reason why we aren't necessarily reciprocating those energies that we'd like to receive beyond the thought of expecting us in return is because we're not where we think we are. Look, I have had to sit down with myself a number of times and say, Lydia, baby girl, we need to check up from the neck up, or let's see what's going on with this. And I'm honest about those things because we're ever evolving. I am ever evolving. And I always aim to be mindful of how I am in relationship with other people, because everyone has their own expectations, right? And I'm like, okay, well, am I being the best sister? Am I being the best friend, the best daughter, cousin, niece, mentor, possible, am I dating? Like all these questions, often come to mind. And it's because I aim to be self-aware. I am self-aware, right? But I do believe it is a daily practice because sometimes we can just get so lost in everything. And we're going throughout life and we're not being present. We're just passing through. So as you are going about your business, make it your business to be in tune with yourself. Okay, so I really hope that you were able to gather some things on this stop of the tour and take them with you as you show up for yourself. I've been thinking about my mic drop moment, and what comes to mind is every time you expect you from other people, you're setting yourself up for failure. And as you show up, it is important for you to be mindful of how you are showing up so that you do get you in return. Everywhere you go, you have to take yourself with you. And if that isn't enough, then you have some real evaluating or reevaluating to do. Look, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your day to listen with your heart, to tune in and just be here with me, right? I appreciate your stillness, your attentiveness, your undivided attention. And I appreciate you supporting me here on the Get My Life Tour, the Get My Life Tour, and all that is to come. This has been really good. This has been refreshing for me to even share as I journey and as I learn and unlearn and relearn, ways to show up for myself. If you want to stay connected with the Get My Life Tour, be sure to visit thegetmylifetour.com. Subscribe for the newsletter so that you can have backstage access. Of course, stay connected with the Get My Life Tour on all social platforms at the Get My Life Tour, with the exception of Twitter because the Get My Life Tour was too long, so it is at Get My Life Tour. If you'd like to stay connected with me personally as the host, be sure to connect with me at Lydia T. Blanco on Instagram and Twitter. You can visit lydiatblanco.com. But you know what? I really want to hear from you. And I would love to, read your reviews. So wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure that you download, that you subscribe, that you leave a review. One last thing before I let you go. If you have any comments, feedback, suggestions, or concerns, be sure to email me at joinme@thegetmylifetour.com. I want to hear from you in more than one way. Let's be connected. Let's continue to show up for ourselves and practice vulnerability. Until the next time, I will see you on the next stop of the Get My Life Tour. It has been real. Peace.